Hello, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast. I'm Justin Sloan.
And I'm Paul Zeidman, and today our special guests are you guys like the co-creators, the founders, co-creators of it's Macroverse.com, Adam Martin and Eben Matthews. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Hello, very happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
All right, fantastic. Well, as regular listeners of the show, we usually start things off something we may have read or watched in the recent past. Whether was it good, was it bad, was it eh? So we'll get things started. Mr. Sloan, take it away.
We had one of these recently, and so I might have used up. Let's see. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't got anything off the top of my head. Dang it.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I've been seeing it all over the internet, so I decided to repay a visit. It is the 40th anniversary of the release of Return of the Jedi. So nice. I already own it. So, but even though it's on Disney Plus, so I started watching it. The special effects, you can tell they're about 40 years old, but the storytelling and the characters and the acting, it all still holds up, and it's just a lot of fun. It takes me back to early teenage me, and going to the local multiplex and just soaking it all in. It was a lot of fun, and it's one of those movies that you never get tired of watching it, and you can't go wrong with the Jabba the Hutt sequences. So yeah, that's what I'll say.
I'm in that semi-small cohort that finds Return of the Jedi to be my favorite of the original trilogy as well. While I appreciate Empire as the better movie, there's something about Jedi that just has that special place for me. Yeah.
Ewoks notwithstanding, I will say that.
Ewoks notwithstanding, I'll go with you on that as well.
Sure.
If we can, I just saw two things. So I just saw Mario with my kids, and have to say that did everything I wanted it to do as a kind of someone that would pause the original Nintendo on my way to school because it wouldn't save to be able to come home and continue playing. Mario touched every bit of nostalgia that I could have hoped for, and just absolutely loved it. And then also just finished Better Call Saul, which I think everything that comes from the Breaking Bad universe has been among my favorite things ever created, and they did not disappoint. So I thought it ended perfectly as far as I was concerned.
Very nice.
Amazing. It's funny because I actually, very late to the game, just finished Breaking Bad, and now we've then watched El Camino as well, and my family and I going through starting kind of Better Call Saul, and it has to be said, Breaking Bad, I don't know why I kind of ignored it for a while. It was just incredible. It lived up to everything I thought. Like arguably some of the best television, arguably one of the best TV shows ever. And then for more current stuff, I'm addicted to both Succession and Barry. Those two are HBO. I mean, HBO, frankly, this whole year with The Last of Us before that it's hit one out of the park after another. It's just been amazing. So yeah.
I gotta throw one other thing in there, which will maybe give us a segue into what we're doing at Macroverse, because a lot of what we do is kind of short form oriented in different ways. But I just saw the first 2 episodes of this latest season of Star Wars Visions, which is just now on Disney Plus. I loved the first season, which is initially the first season was all anime directors, most from Japan, the kind of their take on the Star Wars universe. This second season, they've opened it up to animation studios all over the world. And the first 2 episodes I thought were absolutely fantastic, and ties into something that I've been really enthusiastic about in the world of animation, which is people bringing really fresh visual styles to 3D animation in particular. I think Spider-Verse really kicked that off in a massive way, and now we're seeing lots of interesting stylistic approaches to using 3D animation, but then adding painted textures and all kinds of new interpretations of what can you actually do in that style, and it's fantastic. So
yeah, that is definitely that's in my I want to get to that soon queue. And I think the one that I'm very tempted to watch all of them except the one from Aardman Animation and save that for last, kind of like as like this is your cleanup batter. This is the one that you have to do last, because it's not going to get any better than that. Hopefully. We'll see how that goes.
I found mine, by the way. I remember. I actually just posted about it. Today, like an hour ago, so it should have been on the top of my head. But I've been reading the hell out of a webtoon called Unordinary. Have you guys read that?
I have
didn't
not,
know, I
but
didn't know
that,
that.
So
will take that
good.
as a recommend. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's Webtoon's a Korean company, and this is a Korean creator who made this one. But I got my son on it, who's 8, and he read. We were already like 100 episodes in, and then he surpassed us and read all 300 within like 2 weeks or something crazy.
Wow.
And then I've been reading it to my 5-year-old daughter. She's been enjoying it as well, and so
That's awesome.
but also
Nice.
appropriate for adults. So yeah,
Yeah.
one of those 4 quadrant great ones.
Excellent.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, yes, very familiar with Webtoon, but haven't bumped into that yet. So
Okay.
check
So,
that out.
okay. So, gentlemen, please tell us a little bit about each of yourselves, and then we'll get into how you connected and that how that led to the development of Macroverse. Whoever wants to go first.
Adam, go for it.
All right, I'll dive in. Been out in LA working in physical production for 25 years now, actually, 26, good God. Working as an assistant director, so just worked my way up, and lots of different shows, lots of stuff. First AD now for 12, 15 years. Lots of television, Barry I mentioned earlier, but this did season 3 of that. Dave, a lot of great comedy, a lot of great shows with great people, and always loved being on set and making stuff, and realizing that at some point I was always going to be making stuff for other people, and aspired to do more than that, and aspired to kind of write and create for myself. And I think knowing even Eben can talk a bit more about this as well. So we met 20 years ago or something now, and started kind of working together and writing together, and wrote a few scripts, and we got some stuff optioned, and we did some signed with agencies, and we kind of had some success in that realm. But we also realized 99 times out of 100, maybe 98, you sell a script and it ends up on the shelf or in someone's hard drive. It doesn't live beyond the printed thing on the page. And having grown up with comics and the love of comics and collecting those, Eben can speak more to kind of what brought us back into that world. But it was like, oh wait, we can do these ideas that we love and we think are really cool, as opposed to just writing a script and they sit there. We can actually produce them in this way that'll get them out in the world and get them seen by people and get them hopefully enjoyed by people, and that might actually propel them better than just the script back into the world of film and television. So we felt like it was this kind of way of developing our ideas that would bring them, help them breathe, and then give them a better chance kind of coming back around. And so that was what kind of led us back into comics very directly, led us to starting Macroverse, and then kind of ran into the whole Web3 part of that a couple of years ago, and have kind of kept in that direction. So yeah.
Very good. So I'll just add a couple of things to that. I mean, for me, I kind of look at my career as kind of 3 chapters at this point. So chapter 1 is at a branding and media agency for a decade out of art school. I have an illustration degree initially, recruited some of my professors to start that company. And then we ended up in the kind of sweet spot in what people may call Web 1, where, it's kind of the early days of the internet. We were in the kind of high-end interactive flash animation piece of all of that, making lots of kind of cool websites for lots of cool companies. And then that led to what I now consider kind of my superpower, which is someone comes to me and says, hey, do you know how to do X, Y, or Z? And I go, of course, do that every day. And then get off the call and go like, okay, who do we need? How do we do this? What do I need to learn? Who do I need to hire? So, I've gotten very good over the course of my career of like finding the right people, putting these puzzles together to be able to solve creative problems. And as Adam and I have gotten to work together over the past 20 plus years, we've got very good at doing that together. And so, as that kind of first chapter was making mostly branding, marketing, advertising, that led into some animation and children's books and, a little bit of content creation. But also kind of at my core, I've been collecting and reading comics since I was 6. I learned to read from comics. It's like my, really the love of my life. I thought I was going to grow up to draw comics. That was kind of my first, ambition. And then kind of getting into the comics industry, going to those early conventions. I did do a little bit of professional, comics art early in my career as well. And then kind of moved away from the industry, kept collecting as a fan, but kind of got into doing other things. But that core desire to create my own characters, to create my own content, never went away. And so as Adam and I met and became friends, And we started to, I think it's important to kind of put this in time. We're in a post 90s indie film revolution as well. So as we became friends, the reality of someone like a Kevin Smith or a Robert Rodriguez or a Quentin Tarantino being able to kind of come out of nowhere with a great script and become a famous, film director, we were like, we'll just do that. So that's, kind of the background for writing those first scripts together. And being fortunate to get that little early taste of success where people responded well to them. And we had a couple things optioned and landed at CAA for a minute and did the water bottle tour of LA, pitching lots of things. And then kind of found our way into the video game world through a series of events, writing. Our first video game project was writing more than the equivalent of a feature film, for this console game that we got actually invited to come in and create all the narrative content for. So not just writing the scripts, but also figuring out an animation pipeline and, how to produce all of these cutscenes, for this game. So that led us actually to the third co-founder of Macroverse, who's not with us today, but Ricky Riccavina, who has been 25 years in the games industry. And that was, this first project that we did in games was meeting him. And then, I always like to kind of say, like, you sometimes meet those people where you're like, don't know exactly what we're going to end up doing together, but I feel like there could be something here. So let's stay in touch. And so after, years of kind of staying in touch, the final piece of the Macroverse puzzle is going from kind of first chapter of the career branding and media agency, second chapter of the career writing, directing, and producing, mostly kind of new media, gaming, a little bit of other stuff in the general kind of film, TV, animation world. And mostly Adam and I doing that together at that point. And then the third chapter is now Macroverse. And the final piece of that is I produced a graphic novel series for a movie called The Boondock Saints, which is one of those kind of 90s cult classic films.
Right.
And so as they were getting ready to do the sequel, I got, I was able to kind of go, okay, this should be a comic series. We pitched that to the director, ended up working with Sony, putting all that together. And the cool thing about that is with that kind of say yes and figure it out mentality, it was like, yes, I can find the publisher and get distribution and, figure out convention circuits and, all that. And we did. And so we had this incredible experience. It took about a year to create that project and put it out, traditionally through comic stores, working with Barnes and Noble for bookstore distribution and, all those different things. And then we came out of that, Adam and I together going, we've got these other ideas. One of them very directly a TV pilot that, looked like it was going to go forward and then literally got killed by The Walking Dead, which is a whole story in and of itself. But, we said, let's take that TV show, repurpose it as a comic series off the back of the success that we've had with the Boondock Saints series and, make it in comic form, which, you're also seeing comics and the rest of entertainment becoming so fully intertwined at that time. So it just seemed like a natural next step for us to be able to create our own material, create our own content. And the weird thing that I don't know how many people would have added this on top of all of that was for us to take a step back and go, we could put this out traditionally in comic book stores and kind of go this traditional route. We had a publishing arrangement at that point, but we're not going to do that. We're going to take on everything that we've now seen is wrong with the comics industry. And so we took a step back and we wanted to kind of right size a couple of things. One is we found a lot of inequity between kind of what people were being paid and what people, especially independent creators, were able to kind of make off of the back of their, hard-earned material. And, the kind of challenges around that, especially for independent creators. And then number two is we felt like with independent material, the indie comics world, kind of along those same lines, very challenging to, make that something that's going to pay the bills and keep everything, kind of going. And so what we looked at was at that time, especially, there was Comixology for digital, which was kind of putting a PDF on an iPad. And then there was the very beginning of what Webtoons was at that point. So those were kind of your two digital options for comics. And we didn't think either of them were very good. And so being insane people, we were like, we will solve this for everyone. And so it took us about 2 years, but that's where Macroverse came from, is that desire to create our own material and deliver it in a way that we thought, number one, would be better for us, and then number two, by extension, could be better for the whole comics industry. And I'll pause there.
Sure. No, I was about to ask, like, why did you decide to go, I guess, in a more digital approach rather than the traditional, brick and mortar comic stores and that kind of distribution? So you kind of answered that. But I did have a question that I think both of you alluded to, was that you pitch Macroverse as being part of Web3. Could you kind of explain that I guess for someone like me, a layman who is like, okay, what I mean, I've heard of Internet 2.0, but what is Web3?
Indeed.
Yeah. No, Web3 is simply, where the way we approach it, it is adding kind of true digital collectibility to the digital experience. So we went digital, having kind of had the experience with Boondock Saints, and done the conventions and had the fun of the going and Troy Duffy and pre-Walking Dead Norman Reedus and Sean Patrick Flannery, and like being with a kind of established brand that had a real fan base and people showed up to see it. It was still a pain in the neck to get that book into the right places, into the stores, get people looked at it, and we're like, well, hang on a second, there's this bottleneck around this distribution pipeline. Digital we felt like is clearly the future. We don't quite know what it looks like, but that's the way everything is going. So let's focus on that. And then when we ran into the kind of, digital collectability, NFTs and blockchain and these additional things that added this element of collectability to the digital side of things, we felt like, wait, this is a perfect meeting of these minds. You get the distribution, the kind of Netflix, anyone, anywhere in the world can read our stuff. And for some people who are the kind of fans, super fans, whatever that is, you can then add this collectability part of it as well. And so that made sense, and that was what kind of led us into the Web3 direction. And I think that's how we are referring to Web3 in this context.
Okay, that makes a lot. Oh yeah, please.
There's a community fandom component to it also, which gets interesting and exciting because like to me, I can't help but obviously kind of look at it through my own lens, but it's like the two things there that were immediately appealing is I do have my 25 long boxes of comics that I've collected over the years. And so while it's interestingly, I want less physical stuff in my life at this point, I'm much more interested in having more digital experiences for the most part, with few exceptions. I'm not buying Blu-rays anymore. I'm definitely watching everything through, streaming services and, those sorts of things. And yet there are certain things, like I have a Criterion collection of the Seven Samurai, where if I could get a really amazing digital collectible version of that I could actually own and have the same feeling of collecting, owning, connecting to something that I love in a digital format, I would not care about having the physical version anymore. It's like it's just taking up space. So that was part of it, was just the ability to bring this feeling of ownership, to the digital experience. And then the second piece of it as a fan is what we've pioneered in the last 18 months while we've been building this additional piece of our platform with this kind of more Web3 collectible component to it, is that we also started to recognize that the people that engage in this ecosystem, they have a kind of elevated level of not just attachment, but you're now able to give them an elevated level of, governance, control, ownership, kind of something to say about this material in a way that, you might have just been writing fan fiction on the internet, previously. And so we've been able to take, certain people in our community who have collected, let's say characters in some of these universes that we've built, and allow them to come in with those characters and create short stories inside of this universe. And then we can take our team and say, okay, great, let's recognize this as canonical, actually produce it, make it a real thing, sell it through our platform, then share and distribute revenue back to those original community members that, help to create that content. So it creates this really interesting loop with the community as fans being able to then become creators and participants in the growth of these franchises over the long term. And I'll put a button on that by saying it's like, I think that it's fascinating to kind of look at two things. One is, Rob Liefeld owning Deadpool. So, Marvel, when they adjusted their character contracts in the late 80s, early 90s, someone that created a character gets a small percentage of participation in every version of the exploitation of that character. And so for a character like Deadpool, which came out of nowhere to now be a multi-billion-dollar franchise, it's very meaningful for the, you know, creator of that character. And then secondarily, we like to kind of talk about, you know, look at Boba Fett, going back to Star Wars. Boba Fett, very cool, but essentially meaningless character in Empire Strikes Back, all of a sudden has become a massive part of the Star Wars franchise and led into The Mandalorian and his own show, like, you know, all that stuff. So the opportunity to be someone that could actually own that type of, you know, that piece of this larger franchise is really only possible in this kind of Web3 context. And so I think that's all become, you know, really interesting and a way to kind of look at how do you build these kind of next generation entertainment franchises from the bottom up.
Okay, now we've kind of entered the digital realm and the use of the phrase NFT, that is definitely Justin's forte. So I'm gonna toss it over to him now.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah. No, really cool stuff. So I'm curious. So on the website itself, what are the NFTs? Is each comic, each episode an NFT, or do you buy into the brand, or do you buy something else and then you get access to the comics? How does that work?
so we, like, 2 points of clarification, and then Adam, you should give your kind of take on this too. But I think, you know, it's important to say we started pre-Web3, pre-NFT. So we launched a mobile app traditionally before we even heard the word NFT. And, you know, we had about 100 creators that we worked with, put out about 500 episodes of content. That app is still live on iOS and Android. We're still adding new content to it. Okay. So a big part of our thesis around all of this is not that everything has to be an NFT or not everything has to be blockchain backed, but there's an ecosystem and what I call this kind of spectrum of participation that people can move around and in between. So there's always going to be the probably largest percentage of the audience who's just like, give me great content. I just want access to great content. And that's where kind of the Web 2 component of this, which is a traditional subscription service, you know, kind of comes in. Okay. And then you go to the other side of the spectrum, which are these digital collectible NFT editions. And we've actually invented a new type of technology around this where all of the content is packaged in the NFT itself. So when you buy these high-end kind of digital collectible editions, it's like that Criterion Collection experience. It's like, you know, the hardcover omnibus version of your favorite graphic novel. So it's that piece, which is the kind of digital collectible version of these series. It's not individual episodes. We would encourage you to go read those on the mobile app, but the things that you love, you can buy essentially the full graphic novel experience in this unique digital format that you can buy, sell, trade, and, you know, own in that context. And then the final piece to just clarify for anyone listening is that we've been building this Web3 extension of our platform for the last 18 months or so, and we're getting very close now to release, but we're still in the final kind of bug testing phase right now. So our exact release date is, you know, sometime within this summer, but we don't have an exact date yet. So, you know, keep up with us on the website or in our Discord, and that will be coming very soon.
Really cool. And it says 100+ creators. So how are you finding creators for this, and or how do creators get access or accepted into the Macroverse storytelling, everything?
One of my favorite parts that Adam is going to talk about.
No, it's amazing. And I think it's honestly a combination of people coming to us with great ideas. We obviously generate a certain number ourselves, so we kind of produce our own material. And then it's finding, and I actually credit Eben with this, it's been, going out and finding and going through the cons and looking online, just finding interesting creators producing interesting stuff that hasn't kind of hit the mainstream yet, but is really, really cool and compelling and engaging and doing everything that you want from storytelling. Talking to them, bring them on, showing them what we're doing, signing them up and adapting their content adapting whatever their stories are for distribution on our app. And then a certain kind of subset of those are interested in the Web3 and the collectability and that side of things. It's like great as kind of an augmentation to whatever other digital distribution you're doing, whatever physical distribution you're doing. Come over here, we've got this cool kind of universal app, and then there's this digital collectible side of things. And then we're actually increasingly now, Eben and I were literally just talking this, we're just kind of starting to open up the gates to pretty much if you've got a series that you want to adapt for this, we will put it up on the app. We don't have the kind of Webtoons-like ability yet to just self-publish and go, but that's 100% where we're going. So we do kind of, opening up these doors more and more and more for anyone that wants to produce, a series in this style.
Yeah, it's a little like we're kind of going in stages where I like, the thesis initially when we launched the app was if Webtoons is YouTube for comics, which I think it very much is, where's HBO? And that was kind of our initial thesis is, super high bar for quality, very curated combination of our material and other, kind of top tier creators material. As Adam said, people that, we think deserve to be seen by everyone, but maybe haven't been yet. And so that was kind of the initial cohort of creators. We're heading towards kind of a phase 2, which is a little almost like a studio relationship where we function as studio and distribution for a subset of essentially production companies that are then bringing their content onto the platform. And then phase 3 is this open permissionless opportunity for anyone to come and publish. But I think what's a little bit unique about going in those phases is it also allows us to keep these kind of different curation tiers so that we can set some parameters around, yes, everyone is welcome, but we can have some real specific ways that people can kind of get, for lack of a better word, kind of promoted into the kind of higher level tiers, as opposed to it being kind of YouTube where it is just like everyone throw everything out there and hope that it, connects or that people find it. So yeah.
Is it mostly, I imagine, you use creators? So like if a writer has ideas and stuff, they wouldn't come to you guys and say, let's do it. And then you guys help make it get made. It's more like they have to have the art and everything, right? Or
no, it's all of it. Yeah. So actually talk about Evan and Darkland, because we're just about to wrap that up and it's a perfect example of this.
Yeah. No, very true. So yeah, we've got a series on the app right now that, last one comes out Sunday, I think it is. It's Sunday, it's right there. 13 episode series called Darkland. It's kind of, Game of Thrones set in hell. It's black comedy set in hell. It's great. And that actually came through, I can't remember how it was, but kind of mutual friend introduced us to this producer, Evan Shapiro, who got a Peabody in the catalog, was one of the EPs on Portlandia back in the day, has like been around the industry for a long time. But as a producer had a bunch of kind of series that he had the rights to. And so we met and we got along. He's like, yeah, he loves comics. Let's explore kind of producing some of the stuff that I've got in through your app in this style. And so we read 2 of them and they were fine, but not great. And then there was this third one called Darkland. And the opening scene was this slightly kind of weird kind of dinner party. And there are these people coming and they're eating stuff and, and it's all everything feels a bit off. And then you pull back wide and you realize it's a bunch of demons. And the kind of dish of the day is this person that they're just like chopping into and eating up. And I read that and was like, I'm all in. That's fantastic. That's exactly my sense of humor. I think other people would have been repulsed. But we came back to Evan and said, look, well, these other 2, not really, but Darkland is great. And we feel like you could do A, B, and C. And he goes, well, that's fun because that's actually a pilot that I wrote kind of 5 years ago that I've had kicking around that I didn't tell you was kind of mine. And so we partnered with that and we found, helped him through the script writing process, which is obviously a little bit different from comics to regular screenwriting, because you are kind of, I find at least you're bridging the gap between writer and director much more as a comics writer, which I really enjoy, but it definitely takes a bit to get into. The other thing with our app is because it is this kind of tap through process, you can actually do dialogue in a way that is unique. So you're not restricted by the amount of words on the kind of single printed page. So you can really have more of a conversation going, which is great. And then, but it also makes it slightly easier to write for, I think, for kind of a traditional screenwriter. And then we found a fantastic artist called Frank Calico, and we kind of worked with him to develop a slightly more kind of animated art style. And going back to the same pose and we developed kind of an art process, I would say, for Darkland specifically.
Yeah.
But that we then produced, and we pay for the art, and we kind of share the rights on the series. And we're, like Eben said, finishing that up, and we're looking to do kind of a print version of that later this year, and then obviously take, kind of as that has gone, take that on and out from there. So we do work with everyone, if the idea is good enough and we feel like, oh, this is something really interesting, unique, and different, and the creator is kind of cool, and blah, 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 great, this is something we will absolutely produce.
It's
really
one of the
cool.
things I dare say I think
Really
we've
cool.
gotten very good at is the matchmaking piece of it. So that, the kind of, here's a writer with a great idea, finding the right artist for that and helping to produce that. Here's an artist with an incredible art style who maybe, either needs a writer to help them with that idea or just is looking for something cool to work on, being able to kind of bring those different pieces together. Is something that we've gotten very good at. And then we also have other teams which come to us and are like, here's our fully formed concept. Right. Do you guys want to do something with that? And it's either yes, or let's talk about it maybe later, or some depending on kind of where it's at. So we have every kind of range of that, where it's fully finished and we're adapting it to the platform, or we're starting from scratch and kind of fully developing it for the platform.
Awesome, cool. And then the games and all that kind of stuff that can spin off of it, that stuff's not happening yet. It's like in the idea phase of what you'll go to, or is that, do you already have something in the works for how that'll all be adapted?
Yeah, so there are some elements that we've built into our platform, into our ecosystem, that are purpose built for gaming and other types of experiences that will come slightly down the road. So cool. We're building everything kind of with this blueprint for how it all develops out into other media, but it is a slightly longer term play. I think that, it is worth saying that's where our third co-founder largely comes in. We actually started in the film business as well, working on Jurassic Park and Schindler's List and those kinds of things at Amblin, but has now been 25 years in gaming, having, being responsible for literally 100 million, downloads of various games. So, a lot of our work with him is kind of figuring out what do we need to build at this early stage so that we're not starting from scratch as we start to then go into gaming and other media. And kind of the same for film and television. This is my personal soapbox, which I feel like more and more people are starting to kind of like step up onto with me, which makes me very happy. But it's like we've been kind of taking this approach from very early on with our own material, that it's not really about adapting the comic to the film or the comic to the TV show as much as it is building these story worlds that have a lot of room to play in. And so, when you're like one of our flagship series, and actually the TV pilot that we started with is called Dead Town, which is this, kind of neo-noir, post-apocalyptic, essentially Touch of Evil meets The Last of Us, kind of idea. So you're in this kind of black and white noir kind of zombie infested world, but really not about the zombies at all. It's about kind of the characters that have to live with this world that's kind of changed into something that, we would have a hard time dealing with, which has a lot of room to talk about all kinds of different things kind of in that context. But we started with, here's this big world. We know what the 5 seasons of the TV show is, but that's not what the comic series is. And yet, we know what the story of the game is. We know what the audio, narrative audio edition, series is. So it's like we have built out all these different components. So a big part of our way of working is kind of, because we've been able to produce so many different types of content, and we kind of have an understanding of a lot of different mediums, we can then look at this kind of larger world and say, what's the piece of this story that's kind of uniquely suited to being a comic versus uniquely suited to being an audio series or a TV show or a game? And so it lets us kind of come through this lens of this much bigger franchise from the early days. And of course, things will evolve over time, but it's a different way of thinking than like, what's the show? And then we'll turn that into a comic.
Last one for me. I'll see if Paul has any wrap-ups. How are you thinking about the NFT side of it to avoid this SEC issues and like people think of it as investments and treating it like investments?
Yeah.
Is that something you're thinking about and care about?
I mean, we have to care about it because we intend to be around for a very long time as a company. So, but Adam, you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, we are, so purely legally, yes, we are talking to lawyers and we're making sure that we're, I think one of the frustrations with the SEC right now is that it is this kind of moving target. And so you're trying to kind of, they're constantly changing their tune slightly, which means you're constantly trying to kind of stay a step ahead, hopefully, for these people that don't really know what this is. And of course, when you've got the FTXs and the Sam Bankman-Frieds and these people doing all sorts of terrible, corrupt, awful things in this space, it tars everything with that brush. So we always want to be, we want to kind of make sure that we are as scrupulous as possible with how we address things and how we deal with people. And everyone knows who we are. Like, we're not hiding any of this stuff. With the kind of NFTs specifically, yes, what we're doing is, if we are developing a series based around an idea or an NFT that you own or whatever, that is not, that NFT in and of itself, that digital collectible is not the security. We sign a separate agreement with you licensing that material back from you. So it is a traditional, basically it is a traditional Hollywood licensing agreement that we sign for that character, for that story, for that whatever. It may be attached to an NFT, but the agreement itself is not inherent in that thing, if that makes sense. Yeah. So we kind of, that at least right now is how we have been advised to that circumvents any possible legal issues in that space. And but it's a very good question. It's one we have to be very careful of.
Yeah, no, it is. And we are making sure that we're crossing those I's or crossing those T's and dotting those I's. But I think it's important to say, I think there's so much that this technology can enable for people in every industry. And, certainly media is near and dear to our hearts as kind of what can actually be done here. As someone, Adam, as someone that's been working on film and television projects for 20 years, he gets residuals on a bunch of those shows. And when you look at the insanity of, what quote unquote Hollywood accounting is, and even having some personal friends that have had to go and sue studios to get through that Hollywood accounting, and come out the other side the winners of those suits with in some cases large settlements. It's like that's just one example of where being able to really lean into this technology as a permissionless, open, transparent ledger that, allows people to instantly transact things, is very powerful. And so, the future that we're building towards is one where we can use these technologies to enhance the things that we already, want to do and that other people want to do to solve problems in ways that eliminates, frustrations, especially for creators that, can then focus on making stuff as opposed to, am I getting paid on time? And, being able to kind of build this whole system that allows creators to do the things they do, make the things that they want to make, connect with an audience that wants to participate in a way that they've never been able to before, and ultimately for everyone to be able to win together. And we really do believe that this is how the next generation of content will be created and consumed. And it's a little disruptive. We hope it's massively disruptive, but we do believe this is the future. It's, looking at how do you build the next Star Wars a little bit through the lens of how people consume and play Roblox, and some of the things that have really taken off in certainly my kids' generation. And those are the next people that are both making and consuming, the types of things that we all want to create. So I think it's important to kind of continue to kind of iterate and look through that lens and use these tools, whether it's blockchain or AI, which is a whole other can of worms, but, to continue to understand kind of where these things are going, leaning into those things that can empower us and other people as creators, and, continuing to kind of push that envelope. So, that's really at the core of what Macroverse is about, is making great stuff, but also, finding ways to do it in a fashion that empowers the people that make it and those that want to participate in it.
Awesome. Paul?
Yeah, I have two final questions. You'd alluded to this before. So what if you are a creator and you want to send your materials to Macroverse? How does someone go about doing that?
Very, very easy. So the best place to connect with us directly is in our Discord. So our community is in a Discord server. There's a lot of amazing people in there that have all come in over the stages of this project. which is discord.gg/Macroverse. So you can easily connect with Adam or I directly in the Discord. We're also both on Twitter. I'm more active on Twitter than Adam is, but at Ebenverse is a very easy place to connect with me as well. And then if you just have a submission, like an actual direct submission for a comic series that you're interested in us taking a look at for the app, we do have an email for that as well, which I think I know exactly what it is, but I'm just looking it up right now to make sure that I give the right one. Yeah, submissions at macroverse.com is the right place to send. If you've got especially a completed graphic novel or a webtoon series that's in progress that you might be interested in having on our app, we're happy to take a look at any of that stuff.
Okay, and
on that. Sorry,
sure, go ahead.
While we're on there, is it exclusive? Like if you're on Webtoons and you're on this, do you have to be only on one or the other, or
not at all?
Oh,
no, not at all. In fact, it's one of the things that we really feel strongly about. Like, we certainly don't mind exclusive content, but we don't think there's a downside to having a bigger audience.
Interesting.
And so, one of our creators where we actually are the exclusive digital home for is a guy named Jason Brubaker. Jason, I think, is one of the most talented independent comics creators that there is. He was he was a concept artist at DreamWorks on the Kung Fu Panda movies, has been able to, move into a comics career where he's completely self-sustaining as an independent graphic novelist, which is relatively rare. His work is amazing. We've developed this incredible relationship with him where he still primarily focuses on making these beautiful printed graphic novels that he distributes largely through Kickstarter. And then we take all that material and adapt it for our app. And so you kind of get the digital distribution side on Macroverse, the physical distribution side, through him. And his latest project, we've now teamed up to do together entirely so that we are taking the, kind of hot off the drawing board pages, bringing them out first on the app, and then they'll ultimately get collected, into a physical book as well. So there's everything in between, but we definitely feel that, especially when you experience the format that we've developed for the app, which is unique in the digital comics world, it's additive and different as opposed to just being like, oh, it's just another place to read the same thing that I saw somewhere else.
Sure. So the other question is, so I know there's macroverse.com, but I also know there's macroverse.world. So I mean, should people go to both, or just like if you're going to pick one, pick this one? I mean, which way should we go?
We're headed towards everything being on macroverse.com, but we found ourselves in this little bit of a middle ground right now where macroverse.com is the home of our platform. And as we're in these final stages of like the full platform release, that's really where most of our energy is building and bug testing and test minting and all the things that we have to do to make sure that's ready to launch. And so Macroverse.world has become kind of the thing that we're using as the on-the-fly, communication. Like if we're running a promotion, or we just need to throw up a page for a project that we're working on or a collaboration that we're doing, like we'll start to, we'll put that stuff up on Macroverse.world for now, as the rest of the platform is being built out at the .com.
And actually, I mean, speaking of, right now we have a free month of on the app up on our page up on the macroverse.world. So if it's macroverse.world/free month, you'll find instructions for iOS and Android. iOS is like, click this link and you'll get a free month subscription. Android is like, do these 28 different steps and you'll, get a subscription. Yes. It's very, very funny. But we'll be leaving that up for the next month or so. So anyone who wants to check out that and explore some more about what we're up to there. Yeah.
And if Game of Thrones and Hell sounds fun to you, then now's a good time, because literally Sunday, the season finale of Darkland hits the app. And so you can, binge through the whole thing. And it's one of those things where I would say, we all can name some of our favorite TV shows where it's really like episode 3 where everything clicks and you're like, oh man, I am in. And Darkland is that as well. So like it's interesting, and you got to kind of like figure out the world for the first couple of episodes, and then episode 3 is where you're like, oh, I see what this is. This is amazing. It's hilarious. I can't believe you just did that. One of the episodes got banned by Webtoons, just FYI. So, for whatever that's worth, if you like banned content. You gotta go see it. You gotta go see it on Macroverse.
There you go.
When we say Game of Thrones, we said to the artist, if they could do it on Game of Thrones, we can do it in this series and everything that implies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's it goes a little crazy at times, but it's a lot of fun. So good time to binge with a free month and lots of other great content on there as well.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, did you have any last minute shares or social media, other channels that you want us to make sure we mention?
Yeah, I think really
Macroverse HQ everywhere.
Yeah,
basically.
Macroverse HQ on all the socials. Definitely, connect with us personally. We're very happy to talk to people. The Discord is a great place. Again, I think we've been very lucky in that, especially in the NFT Web3 space, we've got a very positive group of people that are very interested in creativity and creation and kind of engaging in this type of material and being fans and geeking out together. So really delighted with the people that have showed up in the Discord, and would love to invite everyone that likes this kind of stuff to come play and come engage, and there'll be lots of opportunities to participate however you want to.
Really cool. All right. Well, thank you both for coming on the show again.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Thank you both. Thanks for having us. Great.
Our pleasure.
Yeah. And listeners, go check out Macroverse. We'll make sure to include the links in the show notes, of course. And once again, this is a Creative Writing Life podcast. If you can leave reviews, that's awesome. Spread word of mouth, all that. And I'm Justin Sloan. You can find my novels on Amazon.
And I'm Paul Zeidman. You can check out my screenwriting blog, Maximum Z, at maximumz.blog. I've also got my Go Ahead and Ask series of books on Amazon. And I'm also on Twitter at maximum_Z. Like he said, he's Justin. That's Adam. That's Eben. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.